Hi, my name is Janet Skinner. Sometimes in life we need a purpose to continue. And back in the early 1990s, I was looking for a reason to live, if you like. Just happened by accident one day that I saw that Geebung station, which is in Queensland, was going to be demolished and replaced. So I decided to paint it. And during the 1990s, I painted 104 railway scenes, and that kept me going. As I sat on the platform and railway sidings, old people would come over and speak to me and tell me about life in the good old days. These were elderly people. It transpired that many of them were born in the early 1900s. I wrote down their names and phone numbers, and I went back and interviewed them. There's a series of some 35 railway tapes that I'm making of the interviews that I recorded in New South Wales and Queensland. I'm not a journalist. I've got no background training in interviewing. And I really hope you enjoy these films. I hope they bring laughter to many and insight into what life used to be like. And please bear with me. I had fun doing them, and I hope you have fun listening to them. Thank you so much.
I started work over there on the 3rd of July, 1924.
Okay, and that was at the Ipswich Workshop, was it?
Ipswich Workshops. We had to sit for an examination, and I think I came 11th, if I remember right. And I took the job of a carriage trimmer.
Right.
Previously, I had an uncle, a brother of my father, who was a carriage trimmer. I suppose that influenced me a little bit, but when I first started in the trimming shop, they had approximately 27 members there, and the type of work that an apprentice had to do, he was serving a 5-year apprenticeship, and the type of work that he had to do, he was under the instructions from a tradesman who sort of told him what he had to do and told him how to do it and things like this. But the apprentices had to do all the lowly sort of work.
Like they usually do.
Punching mattress tabs, making paste for sticking plans on a calico, and all those type of things. But
what would the paste have been made of? Is it that fish?
Flour and water.
Oh, flour and water.
Flour and water.
Yeah.
And sometimes we used to have to put a bit of resin in it.
Right.
And all depends what they wanted it for. But I started on 24 and sixpence a week.
Gee, what would your hours have been then, Colin?
And the hours then was a 48-hour week.
Right.
We used to start at 7:30, have 3/4 of an hour for lunch, from 12 to 1:45, and work till 5 o'clock. In those years it was a 48-hour week, and we used to have to work 4 hours on a Saturday morning, which I think made 47 3/4. I think they threw the other quarter of an hour in. But I can't remember when we came to a 40-hour week.
No.
I'm not just sure when. But anyway, in my 3rd year of apprenticeship, they had a strike.
Really?
And apprentices did not have to go out on strike. And we used to have to go to work and assemble about 10 o'clock of a morning outside the top office, as they call it, the clerical part of the business. And the CME, who was a Mr. Chalmers, he used to give us a lecture.
Really?
On the different things, that sort of thing. Yeah. But you had to more or less do any work that you could, but it was more or less a free and easy time. And I can't just remember how long they were out on strike.
Right.
You know, it's a long time ago.
So actually, Colin, what was you, I know you did your apprenticeship, but what was actually you were training to do? Tell me sort of what the finished product, you know.
Yeah, well, we had to do seats,
Right.
all sorts of seats.
For the carriages?
For the carriages.
Yeah.
Some were suburban. We used to call ourselves a carriage trimmer at the time. And we had different sort of works to do. We used to put canvases on roofs of carriages, linos on floors, curtains if they needed it, in the different sorts of carriages that they built.
What were the seats upholstered with? Were they like fabric or leather? Or?
Yes, some were done with a sort of a vinyl, which they used to call fab, fabricoid they used to call it in those days, and some were done in leather.
Right.
The first class were usually done in leather, and the second class was usually done in fab.
So the leather, would it come in big pieces already cut out, or did you have to cut it?
The leather
out?
would come in hides, and there was a cutter who was a member of the shop, and he used to cut the jobs out. They had machinists who used to machine them, and they were more or less machined and all ready to put on the seat. But we had to do the basic part of it, put the springs in, and in particularly new work. At that time, they were, soon after I started, I think they started to build what they called the sunshine coaches. And they had parlour cars, and there was a big parlour car chair. That was one of the jobs that you sort of didn't like doing. It was a ticklish sort of job, and you used a lot of patterns and things, and it was more or less a tradesman's job.
You said parlour, you mean like a lounge type of
Yes,
thing?
yes.
Okay.
And they had special coaches that were for the Premier and people like that sort of thing. And these coaches were just used on special occasions, and they just stood over there in the time that they weren't used, and just used to stand there in the yard.
Yes.
And weren't actually used at all.
No, just on those special times.
But it was only just lately one fellow said to me, look, he said, the fellows that are working down, I don't know whether they have apprentices there now, but I suppose I'm sort of rambling a bit from one thing to the other.
No, it doesn't matter, you just go for it.
But he only said to me the other day, if a fellow served his time in the railway and he didn't come out an accomplished tradesman, it was his own fault.
Yeah,
because there was terrific tradesmen over there, men that could do almost anything.
Have the workshops changed a lot from when you were there in the early days?
Yeah, I reckon it's changed an awful lot.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean the actual buildings, I mean, and stuff.
No, the actual buildings I don't think have changed very much.
Right.
But the workings of the thing have changed.
Right.
Machinery has changed.
Yes.
They've got a lot of better type machinery there than what they had when I first started.
Have you been back there recently, or?
No, I have not been back there recently.
How long ago have you been there since you left? You would have been there since you left.
I've been there once since I left.
When did you leave then, Colin?
When did I leave?
When did you leave? Yeah.
1974.
90s, so you were there a long time, weren't you?
I was there about 58 and a half years, apart from the 3.5 years we had out during the Depression.
Yeah. So in the Depression there was no work, they laid you off, did they?
They laid us off.
Did
They laid us off. Yeah, all single fellows were mostly laid off.
Right.
The married men worked 7 days a fortnight.
Right.
In those days.
Geez.
7 days a fortnight.
So, yeah.
And
so what year was the Depression?
well, from about 1930 to 34.
Right. Just at the start of the war then, was it? No.
The war started in 39.
That's right, yeah.
40, and I mean, only for the Depression, I would have been married years before, I reckon.
Probably couldn't afford to with no job.
Couldn't afford to. That's right. And we got back in 1934. I think it was, I think it was May or April or something like that. I'm not really sure about that part of it.
Did the war years affect you at all with your work?
During the war years, I reckon I'd have humped me bluey and starved only for my mother and father. My father was a locomotive engine driver, and he worked all the time.
Was he working from Ipswich too?
He worked in Ipswich, yes, and only for him. I used to do chair seats. Now, chair seats, we used to have to supply all the material, and we got 2 shillings.
So tell me again, chair seats, you had to supply all the material.
Yeah, we used to, and I did a few utility hoods, perhaps a few car seats, I'm not too sure, any little thing that you could pick up.
Right.
And,
so was you laid off during the war years then? Is that what you're saying? You had no work in the war years?
That's right, we had no work apart from a little bit that you could sort of pick up around the place.
Right.
Not a story, I'd better not mention the story there at the present time. But then when I got back in 1934, around about April, May, something like that, I got married in October 1934. Now, when I first started in there was about 27 worked in the shop, and they had what they called a yard gang of about 5 or 6 that used to do running repairs, and they worked outside. They had a little I'd better call it a humpy out in the yard where they kept their tools and things that they used, and they used to do running repairs. The coaches would come in of a morning, say, and they wanted a few stitches, or a seat had been cut or something like that, and just had to put a new cover on it. Well, they wouldn't bother bringing it into the shop. They'd do it out in the yard. But after 1934, when I went back, there was quite a few young fellows came from outside, and they were, tradesmen that had been perhaps working in the furniture trade and things like that. But they used to talk in the railway about the railwaymen didn't work, but we had times on jobs, and you had to work. You had a certain time to do the job, and you did the job and that sort of thing. Now they talk about the railway was a good place to work and all that sort of thing. It might have been a good place to work. You might have been a bit more free and easy than what you were outside. You may not have been too. All depends how strict your boss was. And as I say, we had times on jobs and that sort of thing. But then they started building these AC cars, air-conditioned cars, that run on the Cairns Railway now. But since I retired, that's 20-odd years ago, but a lot of things have improved. But they tell me now there's only about three or four blokes work in the trimming shop, which is down at Redback now, and all they do is cover sponge rubber. In the early days, we used to do spring edge seats, as they call them. It had a spring edge on them.
Right. What did you put stuffing in with the springs, like horsehair and things like that?
Yeah, we used to work with horsehair. We put the springs in the seats first, and then you'd cover them with a canvas, and then you'd put your horsehair or whatever it might be on them, and you'd always do them in calico before you put the main cover on.
So during the war years, how did it change for you? Did it change at all during the war?
How did I change?
No, did it change your working conditions or what they expected of you?
After the war years, they seemed to make a better class of carriage, and of course we made a better class of seat and back. And of course, in a lot of them, in a lot of the coaches there was bunks, and you had to make these bunks. And that's another thing we had to do, make mattresses. Now we had to make fibre mattresses for the engine drivers and guards' quarters in the different depots where they perhaps had to sleep overnight. Now my father, he used to take a trip to Blackbutt, and he used to have to stop there overnight. Well, they had a bed to sleep in, and I don't know whether I should mention that or not.
Well, don't mention it.
But now, when my father came home from this trip to Blackbutt, my mother would have the boiler boiling out in the yard, and he wouldn't take his clothes off upstairs, and they were put straight into this boiler because of the vermin that was stuff was in these these humpies where the drivers and firemen and guards used to camp.
Really, not bad.
Wouldn't just take any chances. I think there was once they got in the house, but we were terribly careful.
Did you want to tell me a little bit about your dad on the railway? Did he always drove steam locos, did he?
He drove lots of things, but in the finish, before he retired, they had special drivers for passenger trains, and he became one of the older men of the driving class, you know, and they had a schedule that they used to run these suburban trains. There was first and second class in those days, and
smoking and non-smoking.
Yeah, smoking and non-smoking in those days, and you know, the first class you paid more, but now there's all one class. Just no first and second, no non-smoking. You're not supposed to smoke.
So what year did your father retire from the railway? Can you remember approximately?
I can tell you. I can go and get some things and tell you.
No, well, yeah, tell me later. That's okay. Did all your family work on the railway for as long back as you remember?
My father was one of 11.
Right.
And his father and mother came out from England, as I've told you might find it in some of your literature, on the Fiery Star and that sort of thing in 1864.
Tell me what you can remember on the tape. So,
how many what?
Tell me on the tape what you can remember. So your grandfather came out from England. Was it your grandfather?
Yeah.
You know, what year was it?
1864.
1864. And what boat did he come on, do you know?
The Fiery Star.
Fiery Star, yeah. And did he come out to work on the railway? Or?
Yes, now he worked for an engineering firm called Avondale.
In England?
I mean, I mightn't have just exactly right, but you'll probably find it in some of the literature. And when the Queensland government, to make their first, I think there was five engines, you know, the type 810s.
Yes.
They called applications, and this Avondale firm in England must have got the job of making the parts for the engines, and they were sent out from England in parts and assembled here.
At the Ipswich Workshops?
No, not at the Ipswich. There was no Ipswich Workshops then.
It was only the old one, wasn't it?
Well, there was an old one, they tell me.
Where the tarp shop used to be.
Somewhere near the tarpaulin shop.
Just between
the tarpaulin shop and the river. I mean, I can remember the wagon builders had a yard gang, as they called it, and they had a humpy made out of an old wagon, and they used to have this thing. See, previously we used to have to go over the old bridge, and you'd walk around and you'd pass this thing on the day they had as you walked onto the bridge, they had a little humpy on the right, and they used to do what they called running repairs too. Perhaps I don't know, might be something wrong with the brakes or something like that. And there was 4 or 5 blokes stationed there, and but after a while they just faded out and went. And, I think we got off the track of it.
Okay, still talking to Colin.
Are we on again?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
How far were we?
We're talking about your grandfather.
Oh, yes,
came
and
over on the boat.
he came out with several others with his wife. They must have called applications in England, and he put in for the job. That's how the Wriggles name came to be out here in Queensland.
Really?
And there was 3 sons when they arrived. They arrived in Brisbane, and I don't know. I'm trying to. I'm getting off my track.
Oh, that's right.
But anyway, there was something else just caught my mind, and they must have came onto Ipswich to assemble these engines. See, now the photo that I've got is one of the Lady Bowen, but they tell me there was 5, and they were sent out from this Avondale firm to come to Australia. Now, I've heard different stories. One fella who did a lot of work for me researching in the railway told me that this gang that came out from Avondale Railway, Avondale Engineering Works in Bristol, in England, were never members on the railway pay. They were employed solely by the Queensland government, but they were never members of the railway. Now this is something that I've only just learned before I left the railway. And I mentioned the fellow's name to you later. But anyway, he told me that was to happen, but I didn't know that. And my father always told me that his father worked in the railway, but see, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I don't know.
Yeah. And your father, he went into the railway, from a young lad, do you think?
No, well, he started to serve his time as a confectioner at one of the confectionery businesses not far from where he lived on the terrace. But it's gone now, and I don't know whether he didn't like it or what happened, I don't know, but he took on a job as a cleaner in the railway, and they go from a cleaner to a fireman to a driver. And that's how he came to get in the railway as a locomotive man.
Right. Do you remember him telling you any interesting stories when you were a lad?
I'm sure. I'll tell you one. He became friendly with a man that was a fellow by the name of Bill Morrow. He must have worked with him, I think, in the confectionery business. And this Bill Morrow and his wife and family, we used to visit one another. They lived at Taringa. And you might have heard of Morrow's, who were the confectioners, see? And he became one of the heads of this Morrow's chocolate. They made chocolates and they made biscuits and they made lollies and all this sort of thing. I remember him come to our place one day and he brought up a chocolate Easter egg. You know, an Easter egg, when it's joined in the middle, usually has a sort of a ring of
chocolate
confectionery around it, see? Now this egg had no signs of any joint, and it had a toy in it, and he'd never tell me father how that was done. He'd never tell me father how that was done. They made these chocolate Easter eggs, and they had what's called a present or something like what you might call it, a whistle or something, inside the chocolate Easter egg.
And you couldn't see how it got in the egg.
He would never ever tell us.
Really?
Never ever tell us.
Okay, so anything else you can think to tell us about, your work in the railway at all? Sort of after the war?
Of course, when you're an apprentice, they play a lot of tricks on you and things like this,
What sort of tricks are they?
I thought you'd ask me what
Are they repeatable, are they?
what sort of tricks? Well, they'd perhaps sew up the lining inside your sleeve that you couldn't get your hand through at knock-off times. We used to use a lot of black thread for tying, for sewing, see? Sewing black material. And this black thread, if you put up a piece of black thread, it's very hard to see. And they'd throw these reels of black thread up over the beams of the shop, and they'd haul your fluffing bag up there and draw the black thread a long, long way away, that you wouldn't know where it was. You'd come to get your lunch and there's this fluffing bag up on the ceiling. In the finish, they'd have a bit of gun, then somebody cut the blue and thread and down it come your bag, flop. And all these sort of things they got up to, And I remember one time I was only thinking about it too. It's not actually in the shop when I was there, but Harry, sometime there was a committee that ran the rostrum, and they had a rostrum over there for years, and they had different committees. Harry Green was one. Harold Blair was a fellow that he worked very hard for. You've heard of Harold Blair, the tenor singer, the dark tenor singer. Anyway, they used to have concerts up at the rostrum and all that sort of thing. But I think it was during one of the strikes, they had a concert in the town hall. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember it being in the town hall, but we used to meet in the winter gardens, and they had a band that played there.
No, this was a concert in the town hall. And at the time, during the war years, for charitable concerts and things, I used to do a bit of amateur magic. And of course they cottoned on, you see.
Yeah.
Now nobody told me before, they had it in the old town hall, which is still in town, that the stage on the town hall is slanting from back to front. Now you've got a couple of tables for your magic, and these little tables wouldn't sit firm on the stage, see? And I was doing a trick with a ball, and I accidentally dropped this ball, see? And the thing rolls down the stage from the halfway down the stage to the front. And I was chasing this ball, and I never caught it. But just spoiled the whole trick, see? But brought a bit of a laugh.
Oh, yeah.
Brought a bit of a laugh. But that's just a little bit of an outside thing, I suppose. They had good singers over there and good musicians, didn't they, Harry? And,
I remember the concerts we used to have on break-up day.
yeah.
Carriage shop.
Blokes would bring in their fiddles and saxophones and all this sort
What
of
do you mean
thing.
by break-up day? Coming into holiday?
The last day, on the Friday, they
See, we used to close for about 3 weeks.
Oh, right.
you always, that was it, see, so
You all had
that
holidays at the same time, did you?
yeah, so that you can allow repairs in your shop.
Oh,
It goes through the different shops. I worked 2 or 3 of them myself. And, but they used to have it. Remember Eric Young with the gum lead?
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
a wizard, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He could play anything on a gum lead. Even the classical stuff he could handle on a
So
gum
you
lead.
used to have a break-up day and a bit of a party and that,
Yeah,
did you?
fiddler fee. Fiddler fee,
Oh,
remember
yeah, yeah.
little fiddler fee?
When did they change it from having these break-up days?
Oh, now.
I wonder what...
No,
I wonder
Oh,
when
it's just
I think they still had them when I retired in '74.
yes, it wouldn't have gone long after that either, because we started to get a bit more politicised, shall I say.
They worked over Christmas then, did they?
Only a few.
Yeah, they used to do a lot of repairs in that over Christmas,
Yeah.
when the place was sort of closed down.
Just going back a little bit, Colin, how did you used to get to work?
Now that's another thing, how I used to get to work. Sometimes I walked.
Where were you living then?
I was living at North Ipswich.
Right. How far is that then?
About a 20-minute walk, probably a mile and a half, Harry, eh?
Oh,
From the
yeah.
terrace to
Yeah, it would
the
be,
workshop, about a mile and a half.
Yeah, it's 3 miles to my place from there. So.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, that's from town to my place. It's
Oh, from town to your place.
It's exactly 3 miles. So
Yeah.
you get about a mile
About
and
a mile and a half. And lots of time I walked. Sometimes I rode a bike.
Somebody else told me they had commuter trains in. Was that you?
That's right.
Had
No,
what?
it wasn't me, but there was
No, that's right.
Oh yes, they used to have a train
The
along,
whole
wasn't
train,
it?
whole
Yeah.
train belonged to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
They
that's
bring
right.
another one down from Rose.
Yeah, just with people that worked. We might stop there, Colin. Hold on a minute. Okay, we're still talking to Colin.
When I first started, some of these older men that worked there years and years before me and nearly due to retire used to have lots of stories. And one fellow that I remember as well as anything was telling me about in those early days there was no tin fence around the railway. It was just an open slather sort of thing. And then and up on top of Raymond's Hill, which is not far from the railway, there used to be a lot of goats. And they used to roam around the railway yards as well. And this fellow tells me that they used to catch these goats and paint one side of them black.
Why?
Well, they'd think they were a black goat and they'd turn it around the other side as a white goat. all sorts of stories,
Things
you know.
they got up to.
No idea.
I can't remember all the things he told me, but
Yeah,
you could,
that's interesting.
you could write a book about the things that happened in the railway.
Okay,
Sure could.
yeah. Okay, we're still talking to Colin. Colin, you just said your middle name is Salcourt, is it?
Yeah, S-A-L-K-E-L-D,
S-A-L-K-E-L-D.
which was my father's mother's maiden name.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I was saying that a mob of blokes in a shop, like the trimming shop as we were, about 27 of us, something like that, might have been 30, I don't know. We became a very close-knitted lot. Knew one another's, a lot of one another's business and things like that. And one of the fellows, will I mention his name?
No, don't mention it.
One of the fellows' house got burnt down.
Right.
And it was during the day time. And when we got to hear about it, I happened to be shop steward at the time, and we went around and we collected money, probably $20 or $10, whatever it was. I don't know what they could give what they liked. We collected and gave him a certain amount of money on the day of the fire. So we organised a lot to go out and clean up on the Saturday. We somehow got on a couple of blokes with trucks, I'm not sure how, but got on a couple of blokes with trucks and we carted all the burnt stuff away and cleaned up the place, you know. Then we wondered how we were going to get him a new house. So two fellows, and Harry knows them, two fellows who were wagon builders, and they got into the railway from outside and they were carpenters. So they thought this fellow that had his house burnt down had a bit of connection with work in the wagon shop. And through that he had connection with these two fellows. And they decided they'd build him a new house. Mm. So we got together and we got permission from the department to go around on a certain payday and put out subscription lists in all the different shops, which was part of my job, seeing that I was with the organiser of all this. And we collected probably hundreds of pounds they were at the time, hundreds of pounds to give him, see, towards this building of his house. So they started building the house. At the start, there was quite a nice lot of blokes used to go and give a hand. But you know, as all things that are free and you give your time, they faded away, and in the finish there might have only been 2 or 3 of us that went and helped these two fellas build in the house. And they stuck by it and they finished up, they built in this house. So then we wondered how we were going to get furniture for it. And at that time there was a fellow by the name of Tommy Hanlon who had a show on occasionally at Her Majesty's Theatre in Brisbane, and he would give to suitable cases houses of furniture and things like this. How he organised it, I don't know, but he was from Melbourne. So I thought, oh gee, what about Tommy Hanlon? So anyway, I wrote to Melbourne, and I somehow or another I got onto the organisers of Tommy Hanlon's show. I don't know how now. Anyway, and months went by, and when we were still building this house, and I don't know whether it was before the house was finished or after the house was finished or not, I get a ring from what we used to call the top office. The fellow was Lou Owens, and he was saying, I'm wanted on the phone up in the top office from somebody in Melbourne. I wondered, who the devil could that be, see? So anyway, I go up and it was a representative of Tommy Hanlon's show. And he said, we've had a lot of applications, he said, and we think this is a very worthy cause. He said, are they still going on building his house by voluntary labour? And I said, yes. All right, he said, do you think you can organise for Mrs. So-and-so, who's the wife of the fellow that the house got burnt down, can you organise for her to be down at Her Majesty's Theatre on such and such a Saturday afternoon without her knowing, and just going down to see the show, not knowing that she was going to be going to be the recipient. Mm. So anyway, I saw Bill, and we arranged it. We got her down there. My wife was in it at the time, and anyway, we got her down there. And of course, Tommy Hanlon's show comes on, see, and house full of furniture, a lounge and a kitchen and a dining room and a bedroom and all this sort of thing. And the recipient's going to be Mrs. So-and-so. And she's in the audience, see? Mm. And she got all this furniture for nothing through the Tommy Hanlon show.
No, that was
and I thought that was well worth recording.
Right.
Just going to show what we were doing at that time as a united family for one another. You know,
all through the railway.
for one another.
In those
that was
days,
good. You all
it
fought
was
together.
really good.
Eh?
Good in those days.
Yeah, good in those days, wasn't it? Yeah.